I have played in 3 Piltover tournaments, and I have gone 3-1 and 3-1 twice, but finally I went 4-0 in my 3rd Piltover Archive tournament.
The stagnating of the attack is very smart by Batsu because he could easily get burned by bullet time if he's not careful.
I had tweaked my Darius deck to the maximum, at least as well as I could, and it paid off. I completely crushed the tournament.
Well, and this is the biggest thing, and I love this play for the Darius. This is exactly what you needed to go ahead and move fast.
And here I'm gonna quickly go through all of the 4 best of 3s, kinda explain what's going on, and just show you the Darius gameplay from my POV. I put the link to my Darius deck down below, and let me know what do you think of these type of videos. Are they too long? Am I going too fast? And enjoy.
Gee.
7 minutes on the dot, baby. We talked about it, Silent Night. We said it was there.
These first games I high rolled pretty hard, so I will go over them pretty quickly. I almost felt bad because of the high roll, but then I remembered I'm playing against AE, so I didn't feel so bad anymore. While practicing and tweaking my Hook Darius deck, I realized a couple of very important things. Hook isn't the strongest when it's cheating out units for close to no cost. Hook is the strongest when you keep track of your deck and cheat out units. For example, when you have used Hook 3 times, you have already gone through 15 cards from the Hook, then plus mulligan, plus draws, so you have gone through half of your deck in a couple of turns. And if you keep track of the cards you have seen in your hooks, you can kind of predict which units your next hooks are gonna hit. So if I know I still have 2 Kaisers and a Vayne in the bottom of my 15 cards, and I use Hook, I know I will most likely hook a accelerated unit. So that way I can kinda do different things if I know my next hook is most likely gonna have an accelerated unit, for example. And then, if you keep track of your grand stratagems, so if I have seen all of my grand stratagems get recycled by my hooks, I know I won't be drawing the grand stratagems in a while, so I have to close the game in another way. So I can't close the game with the grand stratagem. And in this game, for example, I knew all of my grand stratagems were at the bottom of my deck. But that didn't matter here because I had the Triferian War Camp, which is objectively one of the best battlefields against Yi. Because Yi doesn't have that many units, Yi doesn't get as much value out of the Triferian War Camp as I do. So I just kept flooding the Triferian War Camp, kept getting a little bit more value out of it than the Yi, got like plus 10 might and just ended the game with holding the Triferian War Camp, and Yi couldn't really do much. Like, I think in this game, Yi had to get through like 15 of my tokens, and each token got +1 from the Triferian War Camp, so Yi had to go through like extra 15 might just because of the battlefield. So it was pretty silly, but hey, a win is a win. And for my side deck, I took 2 Cold Weeks, 2 Leonas and 2 Void Seekers, which are all very good against Yi, because they disable, Yi's units with killing them and Leona stunning them. And in general, Void Seeker is so good against Yi and Kaisa. So I once again got the perfect opener, like I said before, that these games were pretty rough on the enemy. So there's nothing much to talk about here. I use Hidden Blade on my own unit in the left battlefield, and the left battlefield is the one that gives you 1 draw when you target your own unit with a spell. So I get 3 draw from my own Hidden Blade. But there's another kind of tip and trick in the second game that is actually pretty important. Now, as you can see, I have Grand Stratagem in hand, but I have no yellow runes. I have only red runes on board, and even though I only have red runes, I still keep using my yellow runes without any worry. Because I have a yellow seal, which is, +1 yellow rune basically, and then I know I will be drawing 2 yellow runes each turn. because I kept track of all the runes in my draw pile, and I recycled the runes in a way that in the early game I recycled red runes before yellow runes. So now I have drawn all of my red runes, and I only have yellow runes in my deck. Now, I can keep using yellow runes as much as I want, because I know I will 100% be drawing 2 yellow runes next turn. And because I have the seal, I have 3 yellow runes at the start of each turn, so I don't really need to worry about running out of yellow runes for the grand stratagem. So it's really important to keep track what's in your runes pile also. That way you don't have to react to your draws, you can kind of predict what you're gonna be drawing, and if you keep track of what you're gonna draw rather than guess what you're gonna draw, then it's gonna improve your gameplay a lot. So it's good to keep in mind what's in the bottom of your deck, and that way you kinda know what's at the top of your deck. Here I finish off the year with Grand Stratagem, and yeah, the first match was kind of a breeze. But unfortunately in the upcoming matches I didn't draw as well, so in the final 3 games I kind of didn't even get much hook value, which kind of sucked. But there's also a big weakness in Aurora decks in my opinion, so I'm gonna go over the Aurora's big weakness when I play against Aurora. And on the second game I went against Volibear. I got a pretty good start, but the most important thing was that I was going first, and I played the arena's greatest. I like to play the arena's greatest if I'm going first on the first game, and then save my Trifarian Warcamp for when I'm going second. And I felt a little bit bad for the Volibear because this first game ended in 5 minutes, but also I'm a pretty bad counter for, you know, these late game decks anyways, so you know, it's a little bit expected. And this Volibear deck was very like scaling type of deck, so it didn't play any units on the first 3 rounds, which was kind of automatically over in that point. Finally, when Volibear played some units, I had so many points that I could just conquer both and win anyways. Then I took 2 Salvages and 2 Cult of Weeks from my side deck, which are both very good into Volibear, just like into Yi. Now the second game, I once again drew the nuts, which I did feel a little bit bad about this time because I was against Volibear, but I was also a little bit scared because I was going second on top of the Volibear playing Aspirations Climb, which makes it so we have to get +1 point to win the game. And when I'm going second, it's pretty rough to get to 9 points before Volibear runs me over. So when you're ahead in points, you really need to think ahead on what could be the game-ending play for you. Because against these Volibear decks, you really need to close the game as soon as possible, because winning or losing could easily be a difference of 1 turn. And especially when you're playing to 9 points, I just conquered the battlefields as aggressively as I can to finally get to that 7-point mark, so I could finally start closing out the game. And here I baited hooked my 2 might token, and because I had mulliganed a maiden to the bottom of my deck, I had played a Kaisa, and I had taken 1 Kaisa out when I side decked. I knew that I had like only about 2 cards in my deck that were actually 4 might, and that's why I could baited hook a 2 might unit here. The baited hook gave me a Draven, which is an amazing card, but unfortunately it just died next turn. But because I had Trifarian Warcamp and I was ahead in points, I just decided to stack everything on the Warcamp again and just get as much value as possible and play every card I have into the Warcamp and just pray that the enemy doesn't have the Volibear signature spell that does like damage to all units in a battlefield. Gladly, nobody runs that card really, so I don't really have to worry about that. But I mean, you can never know what the enemy is playing, so. And at this point the enemy got very desperate and played literally every card from his hand. And I mean, I guess he cleared my board, but you know, I still had 2 Dravens and a hook that just keeps printing out units, so it was kinda over. And the good thing about playing the 9 points is that my Dravens are gonna be stronger. And the game got to the point that I got 15 might from the battlefield passive alone, so there was really nothing the enemy could have done. But after the game I did ask the enemy if he had the Volibear signature in his deck, and he did actually have 1 copy of it. So I could have lost that game if I got unlucky. So the game was actually closer than I thought. So finally I got faced with a Kai'Sa. And unfortunately I didn't draw a seal or a hook in my starting hand, but I did draw a lot of units. And something had unfortunately happened to the recording, and it's kinda like zoomed in somehow, which is obviously a little annoying. But getting back to the game, the problem with my hand in this game is that if Kai'Sa draws any falling stars, I would most likely lose this game on the spot without having hook. But fortunately for me, Kai'Sa drew 0 falling stars. So with Arena's Greatest combined with my unit heavy hand, and because I went first, I just kept throwing units at the Kai'Sa, and Kai'Sa didn't have a falling star, so I just kinda overrun Kai'Sa too quickly. So the Kai'Sa ended up overcommitting on the left side, and of course I flooded the right side with units and eventually won the game by holding. I'm just glad Kai'Sa didn't have any falling stars. I got pretty lucky there. I noticed that this Kai'Sa version was running close to no units at all. This Kai'Sa version was running mostly spells, so I took 2 Void Seekers out of my side deck. Void Seekers are especially good against Kai'Sa because they let you draw, and usually the problem I have facing Kai'Sa is that I just run out of steam. Because Kai'Sa slowly gets value out of her spells, and eventually I'm at a spot where I have no cards in hand and no units, and the Kai'Sa just slowly whittles me down. So eventually the enemy played Kai'Sa, and my Void Seeker came in clutch. I instantly killed the Kai'Sa with the Void Seeker, which was an insane tempo play, and Void Seeker also drew me a card. And then the Kai'Sa ended up playing Falling Star and 2 Ikatian Rains and many other spells. I was just getting Ikatian Rained and Falling Starred left and right. But it was fine because I had a lot of draw engines in this game. And I also had the Seal Hook combo on board, paired with Void Seekers and Hidden Blades and the Zone Warrants Battlefield. I had a surprising amount of draw in this game. I just kept dishing out units and slowly proccing the Zone Warrants draw until I had outlasted the Kai'Sa spells and the Kai'Sa control. And I did Hidden Blade my own unit, I did Void Seeker, I procced Zone Warrants multiple times in this game, and I drew like 6 extra cards with this deck, which is kinda good actually. Against spell heavy Kai'Sa, you just have to make sure that you don't run out of fuel. And Zone, Hidden Blade and Void Seeker are kinda crucial against her. You just need these engines, so Kai'Sa doesn't slowly grind you down and you run out of fuel. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of this game because the side decking and the battlefield kinda won me the game, so even if I say so myself, I did play that pretty well. But now it's time for the finals. And these games were the hardest games of Riftbound I have ever played. Like, I had to play some of these games perfectly to win these, but they were so much fun, so I'm excited to show you these games. And no, I did not only high roll this time, so I'm gonna be going over the last 3 games a little bit more in depth, only because they were very, very close, they were very, very fun, and they actually required, like, I would have definitely lost at least one of these games if I didn't play it pretty well. So I'm really excited to share these games with you guys, and And yeah, let's get to the gameplay. So in the first couple of rounds, there's nothing really that interesting in the first game. The enemy is basically just drawing and ramping and just trying to get the Aurora out as soon as possible. But with the Aspirations Climb battlefield requiring us both to get to 9 points in this game, it's pretty rough. I'm an aggro deck versus Aurora, and I have to get to 9 points. On top of playing against the Aspirations Climb, I didn't draw a hook, and my hand is looking pretty dry right now. But at least I have a Grand Stratagem in hand, which is gonna later help me to close out this game when the enemy has like 6 10-might units. So yeah, the Grand Stratagem here is a very, very important and a key card. And then he also played the Dead Bloom, which kinda sucked here. So the instant that I saw the Aspirations Climb battlefield, I knew this was gonna be a very, very hard game to win. The enemy plays a hidden card, but knowing these colors, there aren't many options. So I kinda know it's the Fight or Flight hidden card that can move a unit back from a showdown, and that's why I attack with all of my units. And I am actually kind of betting on the enemy using the Fight or Flight on his own unit, because I actually don't want my units to die, because I have a Grand Stratagem in hand, and my hand is looking very, very dry. So I'm betting on the enemy to recall his own unit with the Fight or Flight, rather than trading his unit for my units. And thankfully the enemy does exactly that, and recalls his own unit. If he hadn't recalled his own unit here, I would have been in a very, very tough spot. But yeah, this is very good for me. And this is also why you need to know these matchups, so you can play around certain cards. And I get to 5 points actually pretty early in this game. And here the enemy didn't even attack my units, which I'm pretty sure was a misplay. My Darius was at 5 and my Poro was at 2. So he could have killed my Darius and my Poro, which would have been worth it for him, and it would have been very bad for me. And I also drew the Vanguard Captain, which is so important because I have a Maiden in hand. So the Vanguard Captain here is like the best card I could find. And the enemy finally plays the Aurora. And of course he hits the Mind Splitter instantly. I think he has like 3 different units. So there was like a 35-40% chance to hit the Mind Splitter. It kinda sucks, but it's also very likely. And he obviously gets rid of my Grand Stratagem. So now my win con is gone. But thankfully I'm at 7 points and the enemy is at 3 points. So I have about 5 rounds. The only problem here is that I can't actually stack the Trifarian War Camp. I could hold the Trifarian War Camp if I wanted to, but there's a card called Bullet Time. If I put all of my cards into the War Camp, the enemy will just bullet time me, and I'm just gonna insta-lose. And even the enemy knows that, because the enemy puts all of his units at the left side. So he's trying to bait me into putting all of my units to the War Camp, and then he could just kill all of my units with the bullet time. So if I fell for the bait, I would lose this game instantly. But I also know that he has bullet time because of the way he plays. So now I know to play around it. And finally, I decide to go for the swing and attack the enemy with all that I got. But I have to do it very, very specifically. And I think I played this attack as well as I could. Like I played this perfectly. And it came very, very close. As you can see, I'm attacking with my units one at a time. I'm giving him as little bullet time value as possible, while I'm also trying to see if he has Fight or Flight. So, for example, if he would have had Fight or Flight, he would have used it on my Draven or my Darius, and then I would have stopped the attack and just passed. But when he didn't use any combat spells on my Draven, I was pretty sure that his only combat spell was the bullet time in hand, and I just kept attacking him with a couple units at a time. I had to actually calculate this pretty well, to the point that if he has bullet time, I can still win this game. And because I had the Vayne in hand, which obviously the opponent didn't know about, and I kept attacking him slowly and trying to bait his bullet time out, and he finally used the bullet time, but it was already too late. I had calculated with the Vayne draw that if he doesn't bullet time my Draven or my Darius, the game is kinda over. He didn't bullet time my Draven or my Darius, so the game is over. I mean, the Vayne draw was pretty lucky, so it's also pretty expected that the opponent doesn't play around me drawing a Vayne. But I did draw a Vayne here, I attacked with the Vayne, and I won the game. So yeah, it was very important that I played around the bullet time here, because I would have insta-lost the game if I attacked with all of my units, or if I tried to hold with all of my units. And this was the only way I could have won. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with drawing Vayne and just ending the game there, because the opponent still had the Aurora, and you know, the Aurora just scales forever. So yeah, that game was very, very close. Like, that was so close. If I didn't win that round, I'm pretty sure the Aurora would have run me over. And trust me, I was sweating there. But I won the first game, and let's get to the second game. So game 3 was a little bit tragic, because my starting hand was only gears and spells. I didn't have really any early pressure, but thankfully the enemy played the +1 rune battlefield, which allowed me to cheese out Darius with my seal. So I tried to accelerate the game as fast as possible, because you know, I'm playing against Aurora. And with the help of this Darius, I figured I could, you know, get those early points racking up as soon as possible. And with the Darius's double move ability, I could conquer both battlefields in one turn. So, you know, the Darius here was great. But unfortunately, the enemy was ramping really, really fast. And so the enemy just jammed down Aurora. I really had no board presence at all. And my only lead was my couple points with Darius. So this game was looking really dim. But at least I had salvage. Well, unfortunately, the salvage got thrown away by the Mind Splitter. So the opponent once again hit the Mind Splitter as his first card from the Aurora. Which sucks, you know? But I mean, I guess that's card games in general. But I would have probably won this game if the opponent didn't hit Mind Splitter here. So by the time I finally got Hook, I didn't really have any units to use it on. I only had a Poro, and you know, Poro is a 2-might unit, which really sucks. Then I made a huge misplay. Rather than throwing away my Hidden Blade to draw one, I should have Hidden Bladed my own Poro and thrown out the Call the Weak. So I really made a big misplay here, because I could have drawn into Hook units, but now I drew Draven from the hooking the Poro, and once again I don't have any hook units. I have 2 hooks, but I can't really hook anything. So I should have Hidden Bladed my own Poro there. I finally drew the Vanguard Captain, but it was already too late, unfortunately. I got my board rolling, but the Aurora was starting to get way too much value here, and my board was getting big a little bit too late. If I drew Grand Stratagem here, I would win the game. So I was trying to play it out, play some time, and trying to get out the Grand Stratagem. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find the Grand Stratagem, and also from the way the enemy played, it was obvious that he was sitting on the bullet time. So the game was kinda over. In this game, if I got a little bit more units in the earlier stages of the game, this could have gone very differently, because then I would have had hook targets. And obviously I should have Hidden Bladed my own unit when I didn't have any cards in hand. And if I got the Grand Stratagem, I could have probably had a chance in winning. But the opponent also played very good. The opponent tried to bait with the bullet time very well. So props to the opponent, and let's get to game 3. So finally, it's time for the final game of the finals. And I'm in an amazing spot right from the start. I have the arena's greatest, I'm going first, I have Seal, Vanguard, and the opponent's battlefield is nothing crazy. It's just a battlefield that you cannot take units back, you cannot move units back to your base. So even without the baited hook, this start is like the best possible start for an aggro deck versus an Aurora. I even drew Salvage. Obviously I play the Vanguard with the Seal, I have Salvage in hand, I just go as aggressive as possible, and I don't even need to worry about the Aurora that much because of my Salvage. I play more tokens, more units. The enemy kills my gear, which really doesn't matter, because I don't even have hook anyways, so the gear wasn't that important. And the enemy is ramping very slowly while I'm just going super aggro in this game. I'm just holding the battlefields, scaling up my home base, and by the time the enemy plays the Aurora, I'm already at 5 points, and the enemy doesn't even hit the Mind Splitter this time, so I can just salvage the Aurora whenever I want to. I get to 6 points from holding, I can just recall my token, salvage the Aurora, play Draven on board, and just run the opponent over without him even being able to do anything about it. He finally plays the Mind Splitter, but I only have units in hand, so it doesn't really matter. And on top of everything, I even drew the Grand Stratagem. Like, how perfect could this game be? So yeah, there was literally nothing the opponent could have done. I went so aggro, I even got the arena's greatest. I have had the salvage for the Aurora, and at the end I even drew the Grand Stratagem. So yeah, I mean, GG, that game was really handed to me. I didn't really need to make any choices there. And let's see if I can go 4-0 on the next Piltover Archive tournament. I hope so. That could be cool.